Good morning, good morning. Well, today's the day to finish up Ezekiel, and so we're getting closer to the end of this study. Maybe a couple of more days. Not sure if we're going to finish this week, since we only got one more day. It depends on how I think about finishing up what's left in Revelation. We've talked a lot about Revelation yesterday and today, this whole week. So I may just do an overview and kind of hit the highlights tomorrow. We'll see. But today is a somewhat of a review, what we've been talking about a lot in Ezekiel, and this particular area that is a promise from God going all the way back to Genesis, and it's going to come to fruition during the Millennium Kingdom. So let's start with a prayer. Thank you, Lord. Thank you so much for this time we get to look in your word. And thank you so much for helping me to understand what's exactly going on here. And of course, we get excited about thinking about this. It is future, and maybe we're not quite understanding it the way it's supposed to be. But I hope we give it give it true meaning, at least as much as we know from the scriptures. And help me, Lord, to be ever truthful to your word. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen. So, call this we're finishing up the land divisions and a review of the city. We've talked about Jerusalem a couple of times in this new Jerusalem. And this time we're going to, again, show the comparison, another part of the comparison between the Jerusalem on earth and the Jerusalem in heaven. So that's what we're going to look at today. And so we'll start off with the same picture I've had for a while now. In this particular area. I know there's a way to make this not have all this stuff in here, but I don't remember how to do it now with PDF. Oh well. Oh, never mind, I'll leave it the way it is. Okay, and some verses. So we left off at verse 7, so we're going to pick up in verse 8, and we were talking about, actually I should have the other one back. Well, actually, because we stopped at this one yesterday, this section of this map. Let me bring up the, just for a second. We stopped here at Judah. And so now we're into the prince's portion here of this area that's set aside for the temple and everything, and the prince. So we're talking about this area again, the holy oblation. I might mention that oblation, all oblation really means is an offering to the Lord. It's the same as the heave offering, which means unto the Lord. So that's what oblation means. Oblation, not ablation. So let me put that other picture back. And reading from verse 8 here in chapter 48 of Ezekiel, and by the border of Judea from the east side unto the west side shall be the offering which you shall offer of 25,000 reeds in breadth and length as one of the other parts, from the east side unto the west side, and the sanctuary shall be in the midst of it. So it's this area of 25,000 reeds in breadth. So it's 25,000 reeds wide, and we end up going this 25,000 reeds high, and ends up being 50 square miles. So let's read again. Just look at these again. The reed is identified back in Ezekiel 40, verse 5. And behold, a wall on the outside of the house round about, and the man's hand, a measuring reed, of 6 cubits long by the cubit and a hand breadth. So he measured the breadth of the building 1 reed and the height 1 reed. So that idea there, the measuring reed of 6 cubits long by the cubit and a hand breadth, that's called a long cubit. The cubit typically is from the elbow to the tips of the fingers, and this cubit is adding a hand breadth, which is about 3 to 4 inches. So that comes out to, when you calculate that all out, comes out to between 10 feet, 8 inches, and 11 feet, depending on how long your forearm is. We typically call a cubit 18 inches. And a hand breadth is between 3 and 4 inches. So you can go anywhere from 21 to 22 inches total, times the 6 of them. That comes out to just around between 10 and 11 feet. So again, we'll tell you about how long a cubit is, a reed is. Okay. And mention oblation there. Oblation there is a heave offering. A heave offering, which means unto the Lord. Back to that verse just for a second. And also it says that 25,000 reeds square comes out to 50 miles square. So this whole area is 50 miles square. And notice that the temple is in the dead center in the middle of it, as I mentioned in that verse. Let me blow this up a little bit. You can see that section real good. So Shiloh, we're going to talk about Shiloh a little bit, and this area with the temple in the middle of it. So notice that the temple is in the middle, hence another clue that the temple can't be in Jerusalem. Like it says there on our diagram, Shiloh is a great candidate. There are 33 references to Shiloh in the Bible for both a person is mentioned in Genesis. Wait, there's one other section I want to mention. In Ezekiel 45, the Dead Sea to the Med is approximately 50 miles also. I thought I'd mention that too. So actually from the Dead Sea itself to the Mediterranean is 50 miles. So you can see that the area that we set this in is pretty good based on the, so just to give you an idea and reference, we see this in Ezekiel 45, 1 through 6. Moreover, when you shall divide by lot the land for inheritance, you shall offer an oblation unto the Lord, a holy portion of the land. The length shall be the length of 25,000 reeds, and the breadth shall be 10,000. It shall be holy, and all borders thereof round about. So this section in the middle, where Shiloh, where the temple is 25,000 wide, 10,000 high. Shall be holy, and all the borders thereof round about. Of this there shall be for the sanctuary 500 in length with 500 in breadth, square around about, and 50 cubits round about for the suburbs thereof. So the actual temple area, we saw that in a different picture. Oh, not that one. That one there is the 500 reeds by 500 reeds. You can see that this is what it's talking about with the so that area you see over there that's talking about in this verse, the temple is in the middle of that area. So it's dead center in that, and the width of that area. And 500 reeds comes out to just under a mile square. So let's go back to the other picture. Verse 3. In the measure shalt thou measure the length of 25,000, the breadth of 10,000, and shall be the sanctuary in the most holy place. So this part of the chapter 45 is reflecting on what we're also reading here. That's why I called it a review. And the holy portion of the land shall be for the priests, the minister of the sanctuary, which shall come near to minister unto the Lord. And there shall be a place for their houses, and a holy place for the sanctuary. So the priest is actually going to be living in cities around this area. So this area will be set aside for the priests. And 25,000 in length and 10,000 breadth shall also be for the Levites, the ministers of the house, have for themselves for a possession for 20 chambers. That was this area up here. Is set aside for the Levites that will be taking care of the house itself, not ministering unto the Lord, but taking care of the house. And you shall appoint the possession of the city 5,000 broad and 25,000 long. And this place here is 5,000 broad, it said, but I call it high, and 25,000 long. And this is set aside for the city. So you can see how this whole area is designed. And it really shows us that the temple is not located in Jerusalem itself. And as we go through this, you're going to see also that physically it couldn't fit. Okay, so back to verse 9 of our text. The oblation that you shall offer unto the Lord shall be 5 and 20,000 in length and 10,000 in breadth. So again, that's back to the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor lawgiver from between the feet until Shiloh come. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Okay, Shiloh is an interesting term. So it's actually mentioned 33 times in the Bible and 31 different verses. And the first place it mentioned is actually talking about Jesus Christ. And that was in Genesis 49:10 that I just read. Until Shiloh comes. Shiloh is represented here by Jesus Christ. And also, as we've been studying all through this, you realize that the temple is a template of Jesus Christ, as we've been talking about. So it makes sense that Shiloh would be not only the name of a place, but a name of a person. And so Shiloh is mentioned in a lot of the other verses as a place. Where the first tabernacle rested once the promised land was taken. So let's look at a few of those in Joshua 18:1. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel were assembled together at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle of the congregation there, and the land was subdued before them. So headquarters for Joshua also was in this area. We see that in verses 8 through 10. And the men arose and went away, and Joshua charged them that they went to describe the land, saying, Go and walk through the land and describe it, and come again to me, that I may here cast lots for you before the Lord in Shiloh. And the men went and passed through the land and described it by cities in 7 parts in a book, and came again to Joshua to the host at Shiloh. And Joshua cast lots of them in Shiloh before the Lord, and there Joshua divided the land unto the children of Israel according to their divisions. And he also divided the land. We see in verses 19:51, also in Joshua. And these are the inheritance which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel, that divided for an inheritance by lot in Shiloh before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. So they made an end of dividing the country. Samuel also was in service here. You got to remember that the tabernacle stayed here until Solomon actually built the first temple. And we're going to get to that here in a minute, but that's about over 400 years it sat here in Shiloh. I think this is really symbolic that the first place in Israel that the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle was positioned was here in Shiloh. I find that very fascinating. So Samuel was service to the temple here in 1 Samuel 1:24 through 28. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour, bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh. And the child was young. If you remember the story of Hannah, Hannah had prayed to God that she would be given a child, and then she would honor the Lord by dedicating that child to the Lord. So this is when she had weaned him. she actually brought him up to the temple. He was raised in the temple by Eli the priest. So this is when she brought him up. And they slew a bullock and brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as the soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee here, praying unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition, which I asked of him. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord, and he worshiped the Lord there. And it's even mentioned during the time of Solomon, just before the first temple was completed, in 1 Kings 2:27. So Solomon thrust out Ebenezer from being priest unto the Lord, that he might fulfill the word of the Lord, which he spake concerning the house of Eli and Shiloh. Also 2 Chronicles 3:1 and 2. And the king and all Israel with him offered sacrifice before the Lord. And Solomon offered a sacrifice of peace offerings, which he offered unto the Lord. Okay, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I didn't put 2 Chronicles in the right place. 2 Chronicles 3:1 and 2. Then Solomon began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem and Mount Moriah, where the Lord appeared unto David his father, in the place that David had prepared in the thrashing floor of Onan the Jebusite. And he began to build in the 2nd day of the 2nd month in the 4th year of his reign. So this is when the temple started to be built. I don't remember how many years, but I jotted down the figures. So Moses built the first tabernacle in 1500 BC, of which they wandered around the desert with that in the wilderness for 40 years. So 40 years in the wilderness until Joshua brought it into Shiloh here, about 40 years, a little bit more than 40 years later. And it spent over 400 years until Solomon dedicated the temple in 1 Kings. So which we'll read here is in 1 Kings 8:62 through 66. And the king and all Israel with him offered sacrifice before the Lord. And Solomon offered a sacrifice of peace offerings, which he offered unto the Lord, 22,000 oxen, 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the children of Israel dedicated the house of the Lord. The same day did the king hallow the middle of the court that was before the house of the Lord, for there he offered burnt offerings and meat offerings and the fat of the peace offerings, because the brazen altar that was before the Lord was too little to receive the burnt offerings and the meat offerings and the fat of the peace offerings. He built a bigger area just for this occasion, in other words. And at that time Solomon held a feast, and all Israel with him, a great congregation, from the entering in of Hamath until the river of Egypt, before the Lord our God, 7 days and 7 days, even 14 days. So for 2 weeks they celebrated the opening of this new temple in Jerusalem. And on the 8th day he sent the people away, and they blessed the king, and went unto their tents joyfully and glad of heart for all the goodness that the Lord had done for David his servant, and for Israel his people. So it's basically in Jerusalem, and that was in 1011 BC. So if you do the math, it's a little over 400 years that it spent in Shiloh. So in Shiloh, just as I mentioned, it's about 15 miles north of Jerusalem. Okay, continuing on, and back into Ezekiel 48:10. And for them, even for the priests, shall be this holy oblation, toward the north 25,000 in length, and toward the west 10,000 in breadth, and toward the east 10,000 in breadth, and toward the south 25,000 in length, and the sanctuary of the Lord shall be in the midst thereof. It shall be for the priests that are sanctified of the sons of Zadok, which have kept my charge, which went not astray when the children of Israel went astray, as the Levites went astray. Remember this, we talked about Zadok, that the descendants of Zadok are the ones who are actually going to be ministering to the Lord directly. And this oblation of the land that is offered shall be unto them a thing most holy by the border of the Levites. So it shows that this area we're talking about, the priest area, is on the border to the Levites area. And over against the border of the priest, the Levites shall have 25,000 in length and 10,000 in breadth. All the length shall be 25,000, the breadth 10,000. So this area here for the Levites is 10,000 by 25,000. And they shall not sell of it, neither exchange, nor alienate the first fruits of the land, but is holy unto the Lord. He measured it for the four sides. It had a wall round about, 500 breadths long and 500 broad, to make a separation between the sanctuary and the profane place. Oh, that's I threw that verse in there. The profane place. So it's first mentioned back in Ezekiel 42:20. And if I bring that back, if you look at this picture here, that was talking about this area here. And what's outside this wall is the profane place. So when we go back to our map, we can see this area here is the priest portion in Shiloh. So the profane place is actually down here. So I just wanted to show that correlation. Back to chapter 48, verse 16. And these shall be the measures thereof: the north side 4,500, the south side 4,500, on the east side 4,500, and the west side 4,500. And the suburbs of the city shall be toward the north 250, and toward the south 250, toward the east 250, and toward the west 250. And the residue in the length over against the oblation of the holy portion shall be 10,000 eastward and 10,000 westward. And it shall be over against the oblation of the holy portion, and the increase thereof shall be for food unto them that serve the city. So he's talking about this area here, the west portion and the east portion are areas to grow food, and those areas, as described there, are 10,000 by, what did it say? 10,000 eastward and 10,000 westward. So you take the 25,000, you got 10 here, 10 here. That's 20,000. And this area in the city itself is 5,000. And they that serve the city shall serve it out of all the tribes of Israel. So that area is going to be occupied by people of Israelites. And all the oblation shall be 25,000 by 25,000, 5 and 20,000. Ye shall offer the holy oblation foursquare with the possession of the city. And the residual shall be for the prince, on the one side and on the other of the holy oblation, of the possession of the city over against the 5 and 20,000 of the oblation, toward the east border, and westward over against the 5 and 20,000 toward the west border. Over against the portions for the prince, it shall be the holy oblation, and the sanctuary of the house shall be in the midst thereof. Basically, it's describing this area is set aside as the holy oblation, the whole thing. And at this area here, and then this area that goes out this way, is for the priest. And that's where we get to this other picture. So there's a holy oblation in there. So the little piece that's left that goes towards the Mediterranean Sea is for the priest, for the prince. And then this whole area here is for the prince. Let me blow that up a little bit so you can see it better. Another place that mentions the residual is in Ezekiel 45:7. And a portion shall be for the prince on the one side, on the other side of the oblation of the holy portion, of the possession of the city, before the oblation of the holy portion, before the possession of the city from the west side westward, and from the east side eastward. The length should be over against one of the portions from the west border unto the east border. This will be for the princes. So again, as we see in the alternate theory, there would be no room for the prince to have his portion. And what verse 8 warns may happen again. Let's read verse 8, and then I want to show you that map. And the land shall be his possession in Israel, and my princes shall no more oppress my people, and the rest of the land shall they give to the house of Israel according to their tribes. So remember I showed you yesterday that other map that some people believe this is the, no, not that one. Where is that other map? Yeah, I know I had it yesterday. Oh, there it is. So if you take that area that's in Jerusalem right here, you got Judea above it and Benjamin below it. There's no way you would fit it in there, plus have a section for the, let me blow that up. Also for the prince, because remember the Dead Sea to the Mediterranean is that 50 miles, so it takes up that whole area. So it's another clue that the area has to be big, larger than what they're saying here. That's why that other map I've been showing makes a lot more sense, and it also fits in with what Abraham was told way back in Genesis. I got a dry tickle right there, and every time I talk for too long, it gets drier, and it starts causing me to cough. So I apologize. Continuing on, let's see where we are now. Verse 22 of chapter 48. So again, if the prince didn't have a portion, then there's a good chance that the prince, who's basically in charge of Israel. This is the way I see the order of precedence. We got Jesus Christ as king over the entire planet. Then we have the prince, which would be David, in my opinion, is in charge of all of Israel. So there's a chance that warning in verse 8, I'll just read it again. And the land shall be his possession in Israel, and my princes, those princes there are talking about that each tribe will have one person in charge of that tribe. The princes shall no more oppress my people, and the rest of the land shall they give to the house of Israel according to their tribes. So that to the one prince we're talking about here, though, is the main prince, or David. If he doesn't have an area for himself, because that area of the oblation is tied up with the Levites, and remember that David is not a Levite, so that his portion cannot be part of the holy oblation. I think David was part of the tribe of Judah. Well, we didn't see that he was given a portion in Judah, so he has his own portion. So just more clues that tells us that there has to be a portion for the prince. Okay, back to 22. Moreover, from the possession of the Levites and from the possession of the city being in the midst of that which is the princes, between the border of Judah and the border of Benjamin shall be for the prince. So again, talking about this area in here. Between the border of Judah and the border of Benjamin shall be the princes, except for what the Levites have. As for the rest of the tribes, from the east side until the west side, Benjamin shall have a portion. So just like we did yesterday, the first 7 verses, we're going to finish off the rest of these verses. And by the border of Benjamin, from the east side until the west side, Simeon shall have a portion. And by the border of Simeon, from the east side until the west side, Issachar shall have a portion. And by the border of Issachar, from the east side until the west side, Zebulun a portion. And by the border of Zebulun, from the east side unto the west side, Gad a portion. And by the border of Gad at the south side, southward, the border shall be even from Tamar unto the waters of strife and Kadesh, and to the river toward the great sea. Notice this one kind of, instead of being straight across, it's kind of describing an area that looks more like almost like an arc to give him the room he needs. Supposedly these are all based on the size of these tribes too. Because you notice they're not in what they call birth order. There's been a lot of theories according to how they list them, because each one has a name. And I didn't do this part, but I've seen other studies done. And it's a fascinating study because each name has a meaning. And if you actually get the meaning for each name, it'll spell out a little message by the way they're listed. I may do that tomorrow if I think of it, to see if I can find that listing. I know Chuck Missler has done it before, and I've heard other people do it. It can be some fascinating information based on the order that the names are listed. Something to check out for yourself. Let's find out what each name listed. It's in the Bible. Verse 29. This is the land which you shall divide by lot unto the tribes of Israel for inheritance, and these are their portion, saith the Lord God. And these are the goings out of the city on the north side, 4,500 measures. Now for the city itself, note it is certainly most obvious to interpret these measures, not of cubits, but of a measuring reed. Again, we go back to Ezekiel verse 40, verse 5, to find out what the length of a reed is, which the prophet's conductor had in his hand, according to which the city would be about 36 miles in circumference. So that's 9 miles on each side of the square, which is nearly 9 times larger than the greatest extent to which ancient Jerusalem ever obtained. So what I would say to this is the fact, let me go back to that other picture just briefly. So this is basically it'd be 9 miles on each side. And that can't fit in the current day Jerusalem area with all the mountains they got there. But we know there's going to be a massive earthquake, and that this area is going to be changed. It's going to be divided in 3 pieces, which we see 3 pieces already. And it's going to be flattened out from other verses. I didn't have the evidence of them right here right today, but I have mentioned them in the past. This is also mentioned in Ezekiel 45, verse 1. Moreover, you shall divide by lot the land by inheritance. You shall offer an oblation unto the Lord and a holy portion of land. The length shall be the length of 25,000 reeds. The breadth shall be 10,000. This shall be holy, and all the borders thereof round about. That's again showing the area that's going to be set aside for the Lord. A holy portion of the land, a length. But the reason I brought this verse is because it actually talks about the reed. There's a reed. According to this, which the city would be about 36 miles in circumference and 9 miles on each side. So continuing on. And the gates of the city shall be after the names of the tribes of Israel. 3 gates northward, 1 gate for Reuben, 1 gate for Judah, 1 gate for Levi. Here they're actually doing them in order. And the east side, 4,503 gates. 1 gate for Joseph, 1 gate for Benjamin, 1 gate for Dan. Actually, those ain't in order. Joseph was the next to it. Joseph and Benjamin were the last son, and then Dan was near the beginning. So maybe this has meaning too. On the south side, 4,500 measure, and the 3 gates, 1 gate for Simeon, 1 gate for Issachar, 1 gate for Zebulun. On the west side, 4,500 were there, 3 gates, 1 gate for Gad, 1 gate for Asher, 1 gate for Naphtali. It was round about 18,000 measure, and the name of the city from that day shall be, the Lord is there. So looking at this verse 30, the Lord is there. We see that term used quite a bit. Let me look at a few places it is in Jeremiah 3:17. At that time they shall call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord, and all the nations shall be gathered unto it, to the name of the Lord, to Jerusalem. Neither shall they walk any more after the imagination of an evil heart. Joel 3:21. For I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed, for the Lord dwelleth in Zion. I found out yesterday, too, that to an Israeli, the actual mountain of Zion is actually where the city of David is. Now, some places, when they talk about Zion, they're talking about the entire area of Jerusalem. But there is a mountain there that most Israelis believe is the actual Mount Zion, which would be the one that the city of David is on. Zechariah 2:10 also. Sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion, for lo, I come, and I will dwell in the midst of thee, saith the Lord. And Revelation 21:3. And I heard a great voice out of the heavens saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. Also in chapter 22:3. There shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. I don't believe that doesn't happen until the what we call the new heavens and new earth, because at this point, particularly during the millennium kingdom, there's still sinners on the earth, and so of course God cannot be living with them as they are sinners. Can't be amongst the sinners themselves. I think that's why he's going to be in the New Jerusalem that'll be orbiting around the earth. So this city also has a huge difference to the New Jerusalem, but similar description. Just like what we said yesterday about a replica on earth of the heavenly one. So I'm going to show you the example of the one that I believe is going to be a moon up in the heavens during the millennium kingdom. And in Revelation 21:10-14, notice it mentions the gates are similar to the gates we talked about at this city. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain and showed me the great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, and her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. It had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and the gates 12 angels, and the names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. On the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And he that talked to me had a golden reed to measure the city, and the gates thereof, and the wall thereof. Notice here it says a golden reed, but they're actually going to define what that means for this city. And the city lieth 4 and the length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city with the reed 12,000 furlongs. Now, a furlong is definitely a measure that's well known all the way back to this time frame. The length and the breadth and the height are all equal. So here we have the golden reed. The length is told us here as a furlong, which is called stadion in the Greek. And Thayer's definition. It is a space or distance of about 600 feet. Or it can mean a race course. You've heard of that furlong mentioned when it comes to race horses and race horses. But a race course is also 600 feet long. A place in which contests and running were held, the one who outstripped the rest and reached the goal first, receiving the prize. Courses of this description were found in most of the larger Greek cities, and were like that at Olympia, 600 Greek feet in length. Actually, if you look at an example of Jerusalem today, a replica of the old Jerusalem, they had a hippodrome in there also. That's where they would have some of these contests. That term is also found in Luke 24:13. You can look these up on your own. Revelation 14:20, John 6:19, and John 11:18, the furlong. So basically, this comes out to 12,000 furlongs at 600 feet for each furlong. Comes out to 1,364 miles in all dimensions. This is why either during the new heaven and earth, Revelation 21:1 and 2, God makes the earth much larger in the external state after the 1,000-year millennium, or its orbit around the current earth. So I've shown this picture many times, but there's 2 options here we got. If we were to try to fit this on the earth as it sits at the diameter of the earth, this is what the New Jerusalem would look like, sitting on America. It'd take up most of America. And it would be so high into the atmosphere, it would actually make the earth rotate in a weird, like, oblong direction, because it wouldn't be balanced. So I think that pretty much rules that idea out. And this is the other theory could be that on the new heavens and the new earth, that God makes a much bigger earth. And just for an example, Jupiter is one of the larger planets, as you can see here. This is the size of Jupiter. If you compared it to Earth, this is what it would look like. So actually, you can fit the Earth just inside this little cavity right here, this little hole. This is our moon right here, and our moon is about the size of this New Jerusalem we're talking about. So you can see that this sitting on top of this wouldn't be a big issue. You wouldn't even hardly notice it. But sitting on our Earth, it is an issue. And my little display here that I got on my back screen is very similar to that. This would be about the size of that New Jerusalem, and this is the size of the Earth. So you can see that the comparison is correct. The moon is about 1/4 the size of the Earth. So if you were to measure this, you can fit 4 of these across the Earth in diameter. So give me an idea. I tried to make it as accurate as possible when I made it. Okay, so that is where there's just a couple more verses I heard about today I'll just mention. I know we're over time here, but in Galatians, Galatians 4:25 and 26 has an interesting Paul here mentioned this idea of the New Jerusalem. So this Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and answers to Jerusalem, which now is. So it's talking about the current Jerusalem here on earth, and is in bondage with her children. The reason I'm mentioning this is because this is Dr. Woods was telling me about this, of Andy Woods, and he actually believes that this exists right now based on this verse, because verse 26 says, "But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all." So this New Jerusalem, which is above, is free. So it talks about verse 25 is talking about the bond, the not free, or the bond, the woman that's in bondage. The Jerusalem right now is in bondage under Satan's control. But here in verse 26, the free Jerusalem, which is above us, is free, which is the mother of us all. So the fact that it uses is, meaning it's present tense, means it's in Paul's time it existed. So I believe that's what Jesus was talking about when he said, "I go to prepare a place for you." And that place already exists somewhere in the cosmos. And I think we will see it during the rapture is when I believe we will see it. And that's where we're going to go. So that's it for today. Let me pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you so much, Lord, for these little clues and for all the information you give us on a regular basis, Lord, through your word. I thank you so much. It keeps my curious mind ever asking questions. And I want to thank you for that, the promises you give us, and give you praise and thanks in all you do. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so I will see you guys tomorrow here or online here, and we'll continue finishing up this study. Don't know if we'll finish it tomorrow or not, but we'll see. Have a great day.